Broadcasting from Baltimore, Maryland, this is 5x3 Radio, where strength is for everyone. I'm your host, Emily Sokolinski, owner of 5x3 Training, a strength and conditioning gym in Baltimore, along with my co-host, Rebecca Fishburne, founder of Cornerstone Strength Maryland. Each week, Rebecca and I will discuss the ins and outs of strength training, why there is a no one-size-fits-all approach, and why strength is so important in our daily lives. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now, on with the show. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to 5x3 Radio. Rebecca and I are here on this kind of gloomy, I don't know, rainy, weird day.
Pouring down here.
It's pouring where she is. It's not quite pouring where I am, but I was at the gym this morning, actually, and I had to take my hat off. And I was training. I was training there with Kim.
Your little beanie.
And I said to Kim, I can't take this. This is like February 16th, and I'm supposed to be able to keep my hat on and keep all my sweats on. And I opened the door. And I took my hat off, and I'm like, and she's there and standing there in a t-shirt. I'm like, and it's 60 degrees in the gym. I'm like, this isn't fair. This is not fair.
It's unseasonably.
I want to keep my hat on. My hat doesn't come off. Usually people don't see my hair.
The bills are confused right now.
The birds are completely out of whack. Yeah. Like they have no idea what's going on. And then it's going to dip to 46 degrees, and then they're going to freak out. And then it's probably going to snow and who knows what. But we thought today we would, discuss something that Rebecca we chit chat all the time, and she was making an observation about one of a client that she's working with, and this subject has come up before on one of our podcasts. I'm sure we've discussed this. I know we discussed body image before in regards to women, but we have never really touched on maybe perception of what strength training will do to somebody's body from a man's perspective, because there are plenty of men out there who don't necessarily want to gain weight when they start to strength train, right? They come into the gym and their goal maybe is not to put on a lot of weight. They want to get stronger, but they kind of like the way they look. And then you have men who perhaps have been overweight in the past and have lost a lot of weight, and then start training and start to see their body change. And it can be a little maybe scary, for them. So we've never really touched upon that with men, I think because we terms and think of body image, we always think of women, right? Women and their bodies, and women thinking about their bodies getting, but men have the same, men can have the same fear too.
Well, and just two random observations, not related to the client in particular, but the same way that we've talked before about this misperception that a lot of women sometimes have, where if they pick up a heavy weight, all of a sudden they're going to look like, one of the really muscular female bodybuilders or something
Arnold.
Like that from one weight training session.
Right.
But I think, there's a lot of jokes even about fat guys powerlifting, and that's what So even today on after year fives, there was it was sort of funny, how to stop being fat: carry a gallon jug with you everywhere, wear a hoodie in the gym, chalk up your hands a lot. Now you're a powerlifter, not a regular fat guy.
Right.
Yeah, we've got Amazon delivering right now. It's protecting the house. Sorry about that. But so a lot of times, people have that sort of idea for men, that if they start doing barbell training or they start, training the big three, they're going to end up with it's called the power belly or the power gut.
Exactly.
That kind of thing.
Yes.
And just a couple of days ago when it was Valentine's Day, my twins wanted to watch this movie that was from 2010, and it was called Valentine's Day. And there were all of these random, movie TV stars in it. In any of the scenes where the guys were shirtless, the only thing I could think was oh my gosh, these guys are so skinny. Right? That's me looking at it, having lived in this world of strength training for a bit of time. But for people who don't live there, that's oh gee, that's what I'm supposed to look like.
Right.
I'm supposed to, if I'm a guy, I'm supposed to look like that skinny guy with the abs and the, all of that. So you've got a lot of unhelpful media coming at you.
Yeah.
If you're a man as well as if you're a woman.
Absolutely.
Around this idea of strength training. But this conversation all started because I had an online client, male, probably, middle-aged, maybe, like late 40s, early 50s. And looking at him from my perspective, I would say he was lean or even exceptionally lean. A lot of the activity that he did was sort of general physical activity, some, golfing, tennis, running, sprinting, some weightlifting. I mean, he had his own squat rack and all of that, and had gone through phases where he did more barbell training than at other times. And he was kind of starting in on getting back to barbell training and wanted to work with a coach. And he was making really great progress. And I guess we'd been working together for maybe 2.5 months. And, he wanted to talk. We had a phone conversation. And you can kind of tell when people get to a point where they start asking for a lot of changes in their programming, that there's something else going on. And it's the thing where it's just like the demands of their life are starting to be impacted by the amount of time that they're spending at the gym at the end of an NLP. And that's an appropriate time to have a conversation about how do we structure your programming so that it fits in your life. But that wasn't kind of the direction that the conversation was headed. He was talking about, he was trying to make sure he was getting enough protein. He was trying to still watch what he was eating, but making sure he got enough protein. He observed that he had gained five pounds on the scale. He said lots of his colleagues and friends had commented. He said that the weight gain was like primarily like through his chest, his upper back, right? So shirts were fitting a little more tightly through, the armpit area, chest area. Maybe pants were a little bit snugger around the waist.
And the comments,
back. Yeah. And all the comments from his friends and family were positive. Like, wow, you look great. You really are looking strong. You look like you're really fit. What are you doing differently? Like this is, and all real positive feedback. But the way the clothes fit on him and like he could feel the clothes being snug and the number on the scale just got him really uncomfortable. And he was asking me, how much more is my body going to change? Right. And that's the question that you and I both had a lot.
Exactly.
And everybody's body responds differently to strength training. I think we've talked before about some of the general trends that happen. Maybe waistbands do get tighter because you got more spinal erector muscles, more back muscle, shirts tighter around the chest because you've got more lat or you've got more pec or whatever. And particularly, I think for men, those are, often positive changes. And he was definitely getting positive feedback from his friends, but just the way he felt and the number on the scale were things that he just was super uncomfortable with. And as we were talking, there was this just like aha moment for me, just this revelatory thing that he said, where after a couple minutes, 10, 15 minutes in, he was like, well, I used to be obese.
And there it was.
And that was it.
Yeah.
And so he had worked very hard to lose a considerable amount of weight and was trying to balance that goal, which he had achieved prior to my ever knowing him, with this idea of building strength and not going back. And so a lot of how he saw himself in the moment was defined by how he saw his past self.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
And that's really tricky. And and I'm glad that that's obviously eventually, it came out, and you probably could hear that coming even before it actually happened, because he's getting positive feedback from his friends and colleagues. He's getting all this
stronger.
He's getting stronger. So he's getting that
workouts,
but he's probably wearing clothes that he had purchased after that weight loss.
Right.
Now those same clothes are starting to fit a little differently. I mean, 5 pounds over 2.5 months, that's nothing. Right? I mean, that's, for people who are trying to gain weight,
trying to gain or lose, that's like totally in the same
that's totally normal. That's exactly it. I mean, it takes me how long does it take me to lose 5 pounds? It could take me 4 or 5 months to lose if I do it really slowly, right? For someone who's trying to gain weight, it might take them, 2 months to gain 5 pounds, because you're trying to do like maybe a half a pound to a pound a week. You don't want to go like crazy. I mean, because a lot of these hard gainers, my husband being one of those, there's a lot more effort, but that is not uncommon. I think that we forget that that's a legitimate fear. I've been big. I've spent all this time losing weight. All of a sudden things are starting to fit me differently. And it's obviously the difference, but he's so consumed with that even the positive feedback was not enough for him to want to continue, because it was such a fear. And unfortunately, obviously you and I are not, therapists. So that's something that is something separate for him to kind of help himself get that feel good about himself and confident about himself, regardless of what little bit of weight he might gain here and there, and the benefits of strength training that he was getting. He may not be getting now, and it's fine if you, obviously, hopefully he'll continue to exercise and continue to, to work on himself and physically. But there's so many benefits to it, and gaining a couple pounds here and there, especially if it's muscle, is obviously good, especially for a man in his middle age, and as he gets older, he's going to want to have that. But that fear is very real.
Because I went through that as well. And the thing that really stuck with me, I think I've mentioned before, is something that Craig Brooks had said to me. Just like this sort of comment, I was like asking similar sorts of questions. And he's like, are you really afraid of a couple pounds? Are you really afraid of a pound?
Right.
I remember. I was like, oh, well, that's an interesting way to think about it. And I was like, okay, well, let's just see what happens then.
I remember actually saying that same thing to somebody at the very first seminar that we did in 2010. He was talking to one of the women who was there, and he said, are you really afraid of gaining a couple pounds to get stronger? And this was she and her husband were both CrossFitters. So, that was, and she really was fearful, and she wanted to get stronger, but she was a very small, woman. He said, well, if you gain a little bit more weight, and then I remember him saying, are you really afraid of a couple pounds? And honestly, it's, when you have a body image issue, yes, you are afraid. You are afraid. That's something that you have to kind of work. You're working through something else at that point. But you can be fearful of it and then still find something that all of a sudden the fear of regaining that weight is gone because you've embraced something new. And I'm talking about one of Diego's good friends, who he's over 6 feet. He's probably like 6'2", I want to say, maybe 6'1". And he'd been overweight. He was overweight. He was tall. So, but he still, for his frame, he was overweight, more fat than muscle. And he spent a good amount of time losing that weight over the years. And the last time I remember when we saw him after he'd lost a lot of weight, and I had seen him prior, before that, he was here in Baltimore, and he came to the gym when I was still at the Merit, and I saw him. I was like, oh my God, I couldn't recognize him. He was so thin. He was so thin. And what he had been doing, step classes and body pump and all the different Les Mills classes. And he was like insane about those classes. And I think he took my spin class too. Like it was all about cardio, right? And he had he had lost a substantial amount of weight, and he was very afraid of gaining that weight again. And then we kept saying to him, like, you need to start strength training. Like, you need to start doing this. He was like, I don't want to get big. I've been big and I don't want to get big. And then a few months later, Diego says to me, was at the gym up in, where he lives. And some old guy was there benching or something. And somehow they struck up a conversation. And I think he basically said, like, hey, let me teach you how to bench. You could be a strong guy, because he's a tall guy. And he started benching, and something kind of clicked that he liked this. This is something that he really liked. And it took off into a whole other direction where he started competing in powerlifting. Like it went from benching to learning how to squat to learning how to deadlift. And next thing you know, he's competing in powerlifting meets throughout like New Hampshire.
Yeah. Well, I mean, deadlift played a similar role for me. That was kind of what got me over.
It was crazy because like we tried in 20, this was like, oh my gosh, Diego and I had just started doing this. And we were like, you got to do this. I think it was like 2010. It might've been 2010. You got to start doing this. And he's like, yeah. I don't want to get big. And then all of a sudden he's like, yeah, I'm benching. We're like, that's great. Then he's like, I'm squatting, deadlifting. I'm competing. I'm like, you're what? And who
are you?
He started to gain weight, but he put on so much muscle, and he had to get all new clothes made, but he looked incredible the next time we saw him. Looked incredible. I remember him coming to the gym to train and strong as crap. I mean, because, he's tall, a big guy, and he different frame from Diego, completely different, strong and kind of raw strength that he just was able to then fine tune and, and exhibit with the powerlifting, but he became engrossed with it. Like, I mean, we're talking like competition. Like he was like wraps, knee sleeves, the whole 9 yards. Like this man was like, and he went from, I don't want to get big to I'm going to powerlift. And
because he found something about it that made him feel good about himself. Made him, and that outweighed the fear that he had of being a body size or a body type that made him feel insecure. And it may have been the old guy looking the way he did. He's like, well, if you can bench, I can probably bench. Kind of, I'm not sure, but I mean, sometimes just seeing someone like you're like, but you're not big. And yet he embraced the fact that he is a tall guy. He is a big guy, broad shoulders, and that he can hold that weight. But the weight now is muscle with, some fat. I mean, he's a guy and he's 50 now. He and Diego are the same age, but strong and capable, and, a completely different sense of like what strength training really is, and what health is, and what healthy weight is. And he's a healthier weight than he was prior to that weight loss, and definitely healthier than when he was just super thin, without a lot of muscle, without a lot of strength. So I mean, like for that individual. And then, like I was saying, so like deadlift kind of was like my gateway lift,
right?
Like bench was for him, and you find so some people who do have like, I am actually, if I'm being quite honest, afraid of a few pounds for whatever reason,
right?
But like sometimes people are able to redefine for themselves through their experiences or from interactions with other people what it means to have, like some additional healthy weight, or what strength training means, or a way to feel positive and strong and confident about their body while they're strength training. Like, what about people who, like this client that sort of was like, I need to just go in a different direction for a while. Like, what do you suggest for people like that, where they're like, no, I tried it a little bit. I actually am super afraid of a couple pounds, and I'm gonna...
Again, I think for that person, and this is me coming from my own issues, with body image. I needed to speak to somebody. I mean, I spent years with a therapist. I mean, it wasn't until actually I started strength training that I fixed myself. See, I'm like the opposite of him. Strength training is what changed my mind about my body. I was fearful of always gaining weight and being heavy, and seeing myself as always heavy, even when I was really thin. So I had a very distorted view, and nobody could actually help me. I mean, I tried it, but with him, I feel like he would actually benefit from, honestly speaking to somebody. I mean, I think for him, it's more of like he has definitely a body dysmorphia, and he has a real fear. He was heavy, he was big, he lost weight. He hasn't been able to figure out that the strength training is not going to do what happened years ago. That was food. that's, you know, that's eating a lot. I mean, I think people forget that, you know, consuming more calories than we're actually burning in a day is going to put weight on, right? We don't want to think about that. We want to think of other things as putting the weight on, when it really comes down to what we put into our bodies and how much we put out. I mean, it always comes down to calories in versus calories out, right?
Yeah.
And so I think for someone like him, it's, you have to kind of step away and say, you know, then I think you need to do what you're comfortable doing.
Yeah.
You do what you're comfortable doing, but it's not, he's going to either have to come to the realization himself that it's not the strength training, that he's not going to go back there. He's going to be a better, healthier, fitter person, even with a few extra pounds, but he's never going to be back there. But that's something that may take a while to get to.
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, it sort of seems like sometimes people sort of cycle through, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, do some strength training, get to a point where maybe they feel like some of the physical changes are ones that they're not really comfortable with yet, then kind of go back to some of that cardio, and then circle back to the strength training. And so kind of go through this rotation of types of training or seasons of training.
I feel like too, let's say the gentleman decided he did want to stay training with you, but he was concerned about the weight. Then I think it would be more of like modifying his program so that he would still get the benefits of training without maybe slowing down how much muscle he's going to put on, like, you know, less volume, you know, shorter workouts, maybe, you know, adding in maybe additional conditioning for, you know, that sometimes just kind of like takes someone's brain from, I don't have to push heavy weight because heavy weight's going to make me big, you know, or a lot of repetitions. So when you cut down on the volume, well, you're not going to build as much, you know, but you're still going to get the benefit of obviously strength training. So, and allow him to do maybe some other activities that, you know, make him sweat and make him still get, you know, still feel like he's doing something good for his body, but he's not gaining any, he's not having to worry about his weight. And if that doesn't change, then it's time to just kind of, you know, you say, then I think, you know, do what you need to do to, you know, make yourself feel better, because that's not your job. I think that's the tricky part of this, you know, is you have to really, and when someone wants to constantly change up their program, it may be just time for them to switch to something else. I have a client who I'm working with who, same thing, he had lost a lot of weight. He wasn't, I wouldn't say he would say that he was obese, but he was heavy, definitely heavier than he wanted to be. And he was having some health issues. And he has an autoimmune disease. And when we first started working, he had a really hard time training because he needed so many days in between to rest and recover because he was have his joints and inflammation. And he was working on his eating and his nutrition. And then after a couple months, things started to resolve themselves. And we started training, and it was amazing the progress that he made. And he was looking really good too. He started putting on muscle, and he was, you know, his weight was staying where he wanted it to stay. You know, he didn't mind a couple pounds here and there because he was quite happy where he was. And then the holidays kind of rolled around this past year, and he started to kind of relax his eating a bit. And the inflammation started to come back and the joint pain started to come back. Now he was still able to train. We started to modify his volume a bit, but he was still able to train. Whereas before he couldn't do anything. He would have been a wreck. But he said to me, I know it's exactly I know it's absolutely what I'm eating. And I have to really kind of, you know, put the kibosh on that and get back to where I was. But he knows himself well. He wasn't worried about the weight. He knew he could bring that down. He knew what he had to do. And this is somebody who there was no fear of gaining that weight again. He knows himself. He's in it.
Yeah, that's interesting,
right?
Because like you're talking then about somebody who's got like a pretty keen awareness of the connection between nutrition and how that makes his body feel, how his body reacts. You know, I guess like a silver lining possibly to an autoimmune disorder, because so many people just eat their emotions and don't have a clue how they're eating, and their body and their mental health all kind of fit into a picture together. but also somebody who has a degree of confidence because he knows he's got the tools in his toolbox to deal with this. It's not something that, oh my gosh, this is out of my control.
No. And he didn't freak out. He didn't freak out and say to me, Emily, I need to stop my training. I'm gaining weight again. He gained a substantial amount of weight in a few months. And he did that. He said to me, because I knew it was, a hoagie here and a bag of chips there and this there. Yeah. And the kids bring the sweets in and it's Halloween. And he knows himself. He said to me, he goes, it starts to add up, one thing after another. And there's those extra snacks add up.
I'm on this tangent now. Like I thought isn't hoagie like a Philly word?
I don't know. He may have not for you. He may not have used the word hoagie, but it was something like a I don't know. A big sandwich maybe, but he was what I like is that he's someone I can speak to very clearly about this and I can relate to him. Actually, I know exactly what you're talking about, right? He said, I need to get back onto my eating board that I know. Basically, he knows how to derail and then return to that track.
And then get back on track.
On track. He knows his body well. He's not afraid of that. He showed me a picture once of himself before he lost the weight. And I mean, recently, a few months ago, before he was having some of these issues, Diego walked into the gym and he was training with me one day. He's an online client who comes in once a month. He didn't recognize him. I said, that was so-and-so. He's like, what? He said, I didn't recognize him. I'm like, I know, he looks amazing. And that's the thing, like he still looks even better, even though he's been having some issues. They're starting to subside because he is starting to really get a better handle on the eating. And the fact that he's very positive about it and he knows what he needs to do because it worked for him before, it's working again. Mm-hmm. He'll get back there, but he never once said to me, need to stop the training. That it wasn't that was making him bigger. It was exactly the food. And he knows that about himself.
Yeah. And also it's good. I mean, like he was training with you for a period of time prior to the additional weight gain. Like a lot of times what happens, I think, and I'm not saying that this was the case for the individual that I was working with that started this thought process anyway, or this line of discussion anyway, but like a lot of times when people start exercising, not so much maybe with strength training, but with cardio, like the increased activity leads to increased appetite. People start eating more. They don't necessarily recognize that they're eating more, but maybe the increase in calories, or maybe they feel like, a little bit more relaxed about, oh yeah, I can have another one because I worked out today, that sort of thing. And maybe don't register that they are consuming more calories and then blame it on the weight training, rather than a subtle change in eating habits that they almost don't even notice because it seems justifiable or necessary even because they're hungrier.
Yes.
And I think the other thing too, though, is like you and I both do tell people when they start training, well, especially if they're asking about food, I think for starters, the only thing that you and I really say is you might want to consider ensuring that you're getting a reasonable amount of protein.
Exactly.
Right. And so sometimes people will take that and not realize that also means increased calories. It doesn't mean just add in more protein. Right. It means substitute some of the ice cream, carbohydrates, bread, whatever, and have that be a source of protein, not add that on top of what you're already eating. And so, there are ways that a person can have additional weight gain in connection with starting a strength training program that is not specific to the strength training. It's specific to the eating habits that they're developing around it that they may not even realize they're doing. But
no, I mean, as someone who struggled for many, many, many years with her own body image and, eating issues, this, the strength training was never prior to strength training in my journal that I have from like when I was 20, and I clearly wrote, I don't want to do strength training because it's going to make me big.
Yeah.
Forget that
Galbraith article that I really
forget that girl
that way.
Forget that girl who was 23 years old. I've learned my lesson, 25 years later. Now I know that strength training actually was the one thing that finally got my head out of my ass about, just to put it bluntly, about eating and about food and about lifting, right? And the fact that like a year ago I had to buy all new sports bras because my back had grown, and my back was still wide. I mean, I've got always had a good, strong, wide back, but I was still trying to wear these sports bras that were clearly too small on me, right? Cup size, the same. That hadn't changed. Cup size, the same. But it's the, what's it called? I'm blanking on the,
I don't know,
the bandwidth. Thank you. The bandwidth. I'm trying to shove my back, my poor back into these small bras. I had to get large and even extra large. You know how that made me feel? I was like, yes, yes. Yeah, all the work I've been doing for the past 13 years is trying to pay off. Now that's a totally different person than who I was. If you'd said I had to buy a large in a sports bra, I probably would have killed myself when I was 23, because large indicates something else. But to me, that's going to make me feel comfortable. I'll be able to take my sports bra off because it's actually fitting me properly. But second of all, it means that something's working, that over the years, I have worked really hard to try to gain strength, gain muscle, gain stamina, and it's starting to, obviously that's a payoff. So in my book, it's changing my bras over from small and medium to large and extra large was a win. That may not be for somebody else, that's me, but for someone who struggled so long with seeing somebody in the mirror who didn't look the way I wanted it to look, her to look. Yeah. Now I see exactly what I see. I don't see anything. I don't see anything different. And that's a huge win. And that has everything to do with strength training. I went from trying to be smaller to now trying to be bigger, and bigger as in like a body that makes me feel strong and confident and, very secure, with myself. But I've never been overweight, but I was heavier when I was in my 20s, right? I'm about the same weight I was then. Now I was then, but with a lot less muscle and a lot less confidence and a lot less self-esteem, right? So, but it's not uncommon it's a misconception that many people have of what strength training actually does for you, right? They forget the real benefits, and we can list those out, the benefits of strength training, and they see, but I don't want to look like that magazine, cover of that person. She's too big. She's not really what you're going to see and what's going to happen to you when you start to lift weights. But that's a whole other, that's a whole other discussion. Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think of, there's somebody else, but we mentioned your guy and two of my guys as far as like heavy and then you have the guys who come in who were really, really small and they want to gain weight and they can't.
Which always cracks me up because you kind of put Diego in that category, and I know him after he did his strength training. I'm like, what are you talking about?
You're looking at someone who's been doing this for 13 years. Now he's been going to the gym since he was 15 years old, right? But someone who's seriously been lifting weights past 13 years. That's 13 years of growth. He's still wanting to have bigger calves. And he's doing his calf raises, and he has bigger calves. They have grown. But it's hard. He keeps looking at his thighs. I'm like, they're bigger, because they're not any bigger than they were. And he puts a lot of effort and intensity into his training, and he eats, and he works very hard. And it's still 13 years. This is 13 years of growth. He didn't look like this in 2011, 2012, 2013, when we 2014, 4 years after he started training. Neither did I. This is a long time of consistently, of working, but he's one of those hard gainers, and we have a couple of those guys who are hard, they have a harder time putting on weight.
Yeah. Well, and I guess we've talked about this before, just there's different body types.
Yes.
And so different body types tend to respond to any kind of training in particular ways. You can't change your body type any more than you could change your height.
Right.
And that will, to a degree, influence how the strength training shows up on your body.
Yeah.
But all of that, it's, like it's an experiment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an experiment. You can control the amount of training, you can control the amount of food. It just sort of takes some attention and some discipline. And honestly, it's like, it's hard a lot of times to find the time and the energy to devote to all of that. And that's when you end up with I didn't realize I had eaten all that when I was stressed out.
Yeah.
Or,
whatever. But I think that's,
or, I didn't, in Diego's case, I didn't realize I forgot to eat.
Right. I think, it's and we were talking about this, and like I said, we could talk about this in another podcast, or, just hit on it now. And we've touched on it before, the misconception of what strength training will do for your body, right? That for some people, yes, they're predisposed to put on more muscle than others, women and men, right? Some men are just going to build up their body faster. Some women are going to be able to put up, but that's not everybody. And, it's how much effort you want to put into your work that's going to actually, provide the outcome. So if you train once a week or once every other week, you're not going to see much change in your body, or it's going to be really, really slow, and you're not going to make much progress with your training. You're not, but let's say you do it every other week. Okay. If you do it week in and week out, 2, 3, 4 days a week, you're going to get a lot more back. Especially if the intensity is there and the duration is there and the volume is there and you're really serious about your program, you're going to see the benefits of that more quickly. But more quickly as in your strength, you're building more strength. Your posture is going to probably change. People are going to notice, you differently, standing differently. Your clothes may start to fit differently. If you're concerned about your weight, if you're weighing yourself, you might find the scale goes up a little bit. But, the belts fit fine and your clothes fit great. And I mean, I had a client who's talking about his shirts and how his shirts are nice and tight on his shoulders now. That was a plus for him.
Yeah.
Not a minus. That's a plus for him.
Some people it's not, because it's an uncomfortable feeling.
Right. That's a plus for him. And
like I'm the sort of person where it's like, if it's not stretchy,
yeah,
like I'm comfortable in gym clothes.
And I like the fact that when I put my clothes on and I put my t-shirts on, that the t-shirts now kind of are tight around my arms. I love that feeling. Oh,
I don't like that either.
I love that.
So that's the thing I can relate to. Like, I just don't like that.
I love that feeling. I love fitted clothes. I don't like baggy clothes. Diego knows that. I'll put a t-shirt on. It's a medium. He's like, oh my God, it's huge on you. I put a small on. It fits me perfectly. I don't
so much mind the small if it's stretchy cotton fabric.
Yeah. But I like fitted. So for him, that's key. But people forget that it's going to take a lot of effort, right? It takes time, and it takes you putting the effort in and the energy into your training to make progress, whatever that progress is: strength, weight gain, weight loss. If it's weight loss, you've got to put effort into eating less, into focusing on your nutrition. Yeah. I mean, I can always tell, whether I've gained a few pounds or lost a few by how my belt feels at the gym. That's an easy way for me to know how things are moving. And if I'm losing a little bit of weight and my strength is still going up, I'm never, ever going to give up my strength training. If I want to, cut down a few pounds, I know it's always going to come back to what I'm eating, how I'm eating, when I'm eating. And I think that's a big thing that we don't want to think about, because people like to eat. We like to drink. But it's not the strength training.
Go together, and then you don't pay attention.
Exactly. Exactly. It's not the squats that are making you big. Sorry. And body squats
it's not the dryer that's making the clothes small.
No. I mean, my mother will always say, when I came home, that's one summer I was away teaching at a summer camp, and she saw me and she's like, oh my God in heaven. And my thighs were like, I could have. And I said, it was the food. I was just eating. I was unhappy. I was miserable that summer. And I think I ate a lot more than I thought I was. It wasn't the aerobics classes I was teaching or the step ups I was doing. That wasn't making my legs big. I wanted to say that was, and I came home saying it was. I was 22 years old. It wasn't that. I was miserable and depressed, and I ate.
Everybody has to find a balance.
Yes.
Right. Between, obviously we lean a little bit more towards strength training,
Right.
and could list off all the benefits of, stronger muscle, more muscle mass, more bone density, independence, more self-confidence,
Right.
being better able to do life, being less likely to be injured doing everyday life tasks.
Yep.
All the things that are easier to do because you've got additional strength.
Yep.
But if you've got somebody who's for whatever reason, right, maybe because of a situation in their past where they were overweight and worked incredibly hard to get to a state of being more lean, or if it's because of a body image issue or whatever, that struggles with the idea of how the additional muscle mass feels on their body.
Right.
Or they just bought a whole wardrobe full of smaller clothes after they lost a lot of weight, and they don't have the money to go out and buy a second wardrobe for their weightlifting. There's lots of reasons, but you just kind of got to find the balance between the benefits of strength training and how that feels on you, and how you eat, in order to either maintain the strength or minimize the weight gain or fat gain, and an amount of conditioning added in there that eases anxieties about weight gain, or also serves the purpose of burning off additional calories.
Exactly.
Just find the balance that works so that you can have as much strength as possible in your life based on what your situation is, and kind of move on from there. And people find, like I was saying this before, people find some interesting ways of calming that anxiety about weight gain. Like, we both have mentioned doing some additional conditioning or paying attention to food. But I had a client who's a male client, similar situation, who had previously been, he looked average build to me, but described himself on his intake papers as having been obese, which I think was probably one of those situations where, based on his BMI, that was the term, but he didn't look that way, and the amount of weight that he indicated that he had lost since that designation or that label was used for him didn't seem significant. Like, it wasn't a huge amount of weight. Anyway, the way he sort of calmed his mind, which I'm not necessarily advocating, but I'm just sort of saying people come up with unique ways, is he had like one day a week where he would basically do fasting, like intermittent, and he tried to time it so it was like not the day before he was going to do heavy squats or, that kind of thing. But that was sort of the way he eased some of that anxiety. I go through phases where I do more conditioning, not only because it eases an anxiety about weight gain, but also it's a way that I relieve stress. And so, that's just a matter of finding the balance that works for an individual.
Always. And you're right.
An individualized program.
Yeah. And you're right. We always, obviously, this is about strength training. Our podcast is all about, strength for everybody. So we're going to always, prioritize that and emphasize that. But as you said, sometimes you have to step away from that if that something else is going on, with you in your mind or in your body or in your life, and do some things that are just going to allow you to get in and get out and feel good, and feel better. And if strength training sometimes is going to be a little bit of a burden, then you either change the program up, do some change of the program, or step away from that. And like you said, do a little bit more conditioning type of work. I find that always I would rather do a little bit of strength training than step away completely from it and modify the volume. If you feel like things are, things are moving in a direction that you don't want them to move into, you can always just find that you can always do a little bit less and still reap the benefits of this type of training.
And I think also keep in mind, like when you do step away a bit, right? Like, or cut back a bit on the training, right? Like a lot of times people wonder, well, how much harder is it going to be for me to regain that strength? Right. And it's generally easier to regain strength than to build it in the first place.
Absolutely.
So if, yeah.
But I mean, it's, and like I was, my mom was training the other day, and, she was trying to pick up this weight that I had her, programmed for, and she's done more than that, but it wouldn't budge off the floor. And when my mom is anxious about things, nothing moves at the gym. That's just who she is. I get some of my anxiety from her. So I know that about her. Nothing moves, and I was telling Diego, and he said, well, what did she pick up? I said, she did 135 for single. He goes, a 73-year-old woman doesn't need to do much more than that. I said, it's just true. I mean, there are plenty of 73-year-old women, like, one of my other clients who's deadlifting 200 pounds, and that's her. But then there are women like my mom who she knows it's good for her, and she does it twice a week, and she works very hard, and she looks fantastic. My mom looks better than she's ever looked in a long time. But she's got anxiety about other things, and she brings it into the gym, and then she gets anxious about the gym. She can't do anything. So, but is she moving weight? Is she there? Yes. And that's what matters, right? I can adjust her program any way she wants. She's never going to stop doing that. It is what she needs. It's what she enjoys. But but I have to find a good program that's going to manage her, and meet her where she is, and help her, stay focused and not get discouraged and not get frustrated, because there's that too. But yes, I think that, it is a legitimate concern for people who, and probably also because they read articles of people, saying things like, if in order to lift more, you got to eat more. That's not always the case. We've talked about that too, that you don't always have to. And, who cares if you've got, some fat? Well, some people do care how much fat they have on their bodies. I mean, we have fat on our bodies, and some people care if they have a little bit more than, and you have to meet people where they are, and you have to be okay with them stepping away. And you can try to encourage them to do X, Y, or Z. And if they really kind of say, well, you know what, I think I just need to try something else, that's fine. That's fine. You move on to the next person, and you try to help them or instill them and educate them in what is real and what is something that they're and legitimize what they're feeling, but at the same time, try to help them maybe work through some things to like get them to a better place with, with what they're doing. It's a tricky, it's all about balance. Yeah. We find that we have to balance how we interact with people, all the time and deal with this. I know from my personal experience, this has been the only thing that actually made me feel that I wasn't going to get big. It kind of sounds strange, but it was. You had the opposite experience. It was the opposite experience of me, right? It was the opposite experience. It was, but this fixed my back pain. This fixed my body image issues. It has done more for me in the past 13 years than I think anything has ever done for me. As far as just like make me find really who I am, and what I'm capable of doing. It's, I can't say enough of how wonderful it is to be able to, move my body this way.
Strength training program.
Exactly. And we eventually we're going to have, I didn't mention, we haven't had the podcast out yet with my client, with Manny.
Oh, with Manny.
But, yeah. But he mentions in his podcast, and this is either going to come out after that or before it, probably after, about his own weight gain and, thinking that if he got bigger, he would be able to lift more. And he just realized it was not really that much better. And he actually didn't feel so good. So then he dropped all that weight too. So there's somebody who, he's been there, done that, find a balance. And now he likes how he feels. He likes how he looks, and, and he's getting stronger and stronger every day. I think that's a good place to end here. I think this is good. It's a good topic. I think it's a topic that needs to be addressed every now and then, right? I think coming back to it.
Well, because I think also as you go through your training and things change, like this issue comes up
absolutely
periodically. It's not like you resolve this issue of how you feel in your body once and for all.
Never.
It's sort of a continual
Yeah, and it costs.
For a lot of people.
It's something that needs. Yeah, it's something that needs to be addressed. Like we need to think about that as well as thinking about how to train through injuries or through other issues that might come up. It's the same thing. Trying to find that balance. Trying to find the modifications. Make modifications in your program to do what is going to be right for you at the time. We're gonna.
So is it raining up there yet?
Not is it? No. Yes, it is. It is raining. Yeah. It is raining.
This is definitely long enough for a storm to travel from my house to
yes. You said in about an hour, and it's just under an hour right now. So it is raining. We're going to end there for today. If you've got questions, of course, about anything we've talked about, please always send us your questions or comments. You can email me at emily@5by3.com or Rebecca at
cornerstonestrengthmaryland@gmail.com.
We have our Strong Woman contest is coming up on June 11th, Sunday, June 11th. Registration has opened. And we will start, we're going to start our fundraising sometime in like May, end of April, early May. So be on the lookout for our fundraising page for that. We did meet our goal from last year. So we have met our goal, and it's just a matter of raising money to raise money. But if anybody listening is interested in making a donation when that comes out, I'll have the link for you. Or if you're interested in registering for the contest, or you think someone might be interested in registering for the contest, definitely tell them to check us out. Charm City Strong Woman. You can find us on Facebook, and always go to my website, 5by3.com, and you have the blog post there. So thanks very much for another, podcast listening experience.
Yeah. And actually, Emily, hoagie is a Philly word.
Yeah, I knew that. I don't know why that popped in my head. I have to ask.
Okay, because I just looked it up because it became popular because the people who worked at the Philadelphia Naval Yard, which was also known as Hog Island, often ate sandwiches, and then those became known as hoagies.
I have no idea how that word popped in my head. I'm going to ask him tomorrow when I see him if he used that word
out of my mouth. I would not have been surprised. I grew up around Philly.
And maybe because I think of like the SNL bit with Adam Sandler and Chris Farley, hoagies and grinders. Maybe means the lunch lady.
Now I gotta go look for that.
The lunch lady land. Thanks everybody. Yeah. Have a great week. We'll be back in a couple weeks. See you then. Bye, Rebecca.
Right, take care.
Bye. Yeah, I don't know why that word hoagies popped in my head. Thanks for listening to 5by3 Radio with Emily and Rebecca. If you like our show and want to know more about 5by3 training, please visit us at www.5, that's F-I-V-E, the letter X, the number 3.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. To learn more about Rebecca, please visit her website, cornerstonestrengthmaryland.com. Thanks for listening and have a great week.